like everybody is talking about AI, artificial intelligence. And today we have a guest who will take the mystery out of AI because she explains it for a living.
Karen Howe. She's a Hong Kong-based reporter for the Wall Street Journal. She covers China tech and AI. She's
And
leading
society.
and
She
society,
writes about a lot of things.
but she knows more about AI than AI knows about AI.
That's right. The funny thing is she was previously a senior editor of artificial intelligence at MIT Technology Review because she was actually an engineering student and then decided after being a startup in San Francisco, she decided to become a journalist. So she knows it. She knows technology from that standpoint, and now she's reporting on it, which is very cool.
So this is After Deadline. I'm Mark Silverstein.
I'm Kathy Fowler.
And that's the last you're going to hear from us because we just AI'd all our questions, and this is deepfake video.
Yeah.
We're not really here today.
If it was a deep fake, I think I would make my deep fake with less wrinkles. But anyway, can we fix my
I'm not sure where to go with that one. So why don't we just turn it over to our talk with Karen Howe of the Wall Street Journal, who is joining us from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Karen Howe is joining us. I think, first of all, she gets the award for the greatest distance.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't interviewed anybody from Hong Kong yet.
You're in Hong Kong, right?
I'm in Hong Kong.
Wow. And so what investment should I make today? I mean, you already know how the day ends.
Well, I'm a journalist, and the Wall Street Journal's policy is that we cannot give investment advice.
Definitely no insider training. She'd have to report about herself later.
I know I come from the future, but
yes, blink twice if I should sell, blink once if I should buy. Okay.
But we're not here to talk about stocks.
Yes, we're here to talk about technology, China. Your title is
AI and China tech reporter at the Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal. We went uptown on this one.
We did.
This is big. So let's get to AI because everybody's talking about AI. It's like it went from 0 to 120 overnight.
It's like it was invented a week ago.
You've been talking about it I watched your TEDx talk from 2020, I think it was. And you were
February 2020, literally weeks before the pandemic was declared.
Oh.
So what is AI and when is it taking over the world?
Okay, so AI, yeah, it has been crazy for me seeing the discourse around AI get so big because I mean, when you're in your little media bubble, you already think the thing that you're covering is big. And I've already been covering this for 5 years. So I thought 5 years ago AI was already big. But AI, as we know it today, has actually been around for quite a while. It's been around since 2012. And if you think about AI as a concept, it's been around since the 60s. But what is AI today? Like this 10-year time span of modern AI, the way that I like to think about it, it's fancy statistics. We are just creating these really powerful pattern matching systems, pattern matching engines. And we do that by taking a lot of data, using a lot of computational power, crunching a lot of numbers, doing some complicated math, fancy statistics, and then that data, there's a pattern that comes out of it. That pattern is used to make decisions. And what we're seeing right now, which is called generative AI, is basically taking those patterns and instead of making decisions on them, it's just literally generating another output that matches exactly the patterns that it's detecting from the data. So it's crunching a lot of numbers and seeing what are the pixels that most commonly show up next to each other and then outputting those pixels. And then suddenly you get like this really high quality, hyper realistic image, or it's crunching the numbers and seeing what are the words that usually appear next to each other. And suddenly you get this really human-like essay.
It's really in its earliest form, it's data analytics. It's analyzing data and spitting out faster. But now, now it's like able to, it's being used in different ways. First of all, it's like Siri and Alexis. I mean, is that AI?
Alexa.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. In like the popular conception, like Alexa is one AI. But actually from the scientific or the industry way that people think about it is actually the conglomeration of many AI systems or many AI models. That's the kind of lingo in the AI world is a model. You have like one model is an algorithm that took some data, crunched some numbers, got the pattern, and then has what sort of the equivalent of what we would call a mental model of that data. And Alexa has a lot of, or Siri has a lot of these models actually running under it. So it's actually not just one AI, it's many AIs working together that create a single AI system.
So AI has really been a part, and I know doctors are using it actually in a great way. It's helping them run through potential diagnoses. And if you have all these symptoms, and then I've heard it's pretty accurate, like in the 90%, as far as like giving doctors, like if you crunch a bunch of symptoms and their history and looks at their whole history, then it can give doctors like, hey, you should look at this and this for a diagnosis. That's right, right?
Yeah, totally. It always depends on the accuracy of a system always depends on a couple things. Like one is fundamentally what it's doing pattern matching, because if it's not pattern matching, then things get a little bit more dicey. Like it's a little bit harder for a machine to be doing this. And then another question is, do you actually have good data? And if you're going to try to diagnose cancer with AI, you need a lot of people that had cancer that gave their data so that this AI algorithm learns and creates the mental model for what it actually looks like to have a very specific type of cancer, not all types of cancer, but let's say breast cancer. It learns just from seeing thousands, millions, potentially even more examples of patients that have breast cancer, and then learns, okay, these are the different things that I should be looking for that then help identify that another person that I've never seen before actually has breast cancer. So in those kinds of instances where you have the pattern matching as at the core and you have really high quality data, you can get really high accuracy levels. But as we've seen through headlines as well, there are many times when AI doesn't work, and it's always one of those two things, basically. It's either the quality of the data wasn't very good, or it wasn't actually pattern matching at its core.
See, back in a previous career, when we were reporters, we became reporters because we know nothing about math. So it's a good thing that we got out when we did, because apparently you're very good with these numbers and algorithms and understanding everything.
Wouldn't be reporting on AI because we wouldn't understand the math, but maybe it would just analyze the math for us and we could get out of it.
I'm kind of following what's going on here, but so what happened? What was the turning point where we went from Alexa, what's the weather today, to everybody talking about ChatGPT?
Yeah.
And then,
why did this just suddenly explode when you've been talking about it since, what you say, 2015?
Yeah, it's the trends that we're seeing now sort of has its roots back in, I want to say 2016, maybe 2016, 2017, when actually there was this algorithm that was invented called a transformer, which basically all you really need to know about a transformer is that it turned pattern matching. It was like pattern matching on steroids. Like before, we had algorithms that were already really good at pattern matching, but transformer algorithms then were able to do pattern matching across really long sequences of data. So algorithms from the past, they could detect whether cat appears often next to fur, but it was like on a word by word basis. And that's why if you ever used your iPhone back in the day to just hit each auto complete word by word, like it just could not complete a sensible sentence. Like you just hit the thing and then the sentence would go like really haywire halfway through because it was just predicting things word by word. With transformer algorithms, it started producing full sentences that actually make sense, full paragraphs that make sense, full essays that make sense. But we didn't know that when transformer algorithms were first invented. It was just actually for Google search, because Google invented it to just improve its search engine. It was like, if we can figure out what a web page says and then better match it with what people are typing in the search bar, then we can really improve search quality results. We can improve our ad targeting. We can make a lot more money. But then there was this community of people, primarily OpenAI being like the main face of it, that was like, what would happen if we took this transformer algorithm and actually tried getting it to reflect back to us, generate stuff, what it's learning, because it'll give us more visibility into what this algorithm is actually getting out of scanning the entire internet. And we can start to test whether or not it is grasping some sense of the human language. If we talk to it, then we can get a sense of it's actually capturing what the mental model is. And I think originally the idea was just to try and understand a bit more, get in the quote unquote mind, so to speak, of the AI algorithms. But then what they stumbled upon was, holy crap, this is also just like a really powerful tool for writing stuff. And so then that kind of fed into this fire of, okay, let's like keep adding more data and seeing how crazy, how many skills it can start to develop. Like, can it write poetry? Can it write rap? Can we train it on music and start having it generate music? Can we train it on images and have it start generating images? And it just snowballed from there, and it became its own thing. Generative AI became its own thing. But originally it was actually like a very commercial tool. And then it was sort of like a research tool. And then suddenly it became a commercial, like productizable thing again, because people realized that this kind of software is stuff that people could use in their day-to-day jobs.
So us getting the questions from ChatGPT to ask you, not a surprise, right?
We didn't use our own brains. ChatGPT is basically behind this whole interview. So I was surprised or maybe I shouldn't be surprised, that Elon Musk had a hand in the creation. Is that right? Of
OpenAI. Yeah.
OpenAI? Okay. I don't know whether to be even more scared, or because now he says he's among a bunch of the tech guys who say, wait, we should put a hold, and not his AI and Tesla, of course, but all the other AI. Maybe we should take a pause and like think about this from a societal standpoint, right?
You know what's funny is he actually founded OpenAI when he was already talking about that stuff. So he, at the time when he founded OpenAI or co-founded OpenAI, he had just read Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence, which is this book that basically talks about how AI can go really haywire and destroy society. And my guess is that he read this book and was like, oh my God, I need to do something about it, because either I let other people build AI and destroy society, or I take control and build AI that will obviously save the world. So that was sort of the premise under which he co-founded OpenAI. And then he also co-founded with Sam Altman, who's now, of course, the CEO. And then they had this idea that they should keep it as a nonprofit, because they specifically believed that if AI development was constrained by competitive commercial pressures, that it would most definitely go haywire, which is really fun because now we are in the exact instance where all of the AI development is constrained by commercial competitive pressures. But there was basically a disagreement between Musk and Altman a couple of years into OpenAI that led Elon Musk to leave and decide, I don't want to be part of this project anymore. This is not what I originally intended for this nonprofit. And of course, now he's trying to build a competitor to OpenAI called XAI for very different reasons, I think. But anyway, yeah, a lot of these AI companies are sort of the playthings of billionaires.
And then Google is also doing
Wait, they're the playthings of billionaire. That's great.
that, and going to space. That's what the billionaires do. They create things that could take over the world, and then they all want to go to space. Because I guess maybe this world they'll destroy, and then they just want to make sure there's
exactly. And then all of us plebeians will just be left here, and they'll all have their colony on Mars. Yeah, it'll be great.
It'll be great.
So
no scare.
In your talk from 2020, you said there's good news and there's bad news, and it's basically the same thing about AI. So in briefly, what's the good news, and then we can get to the fun stuff. You mentioned Terminator. So, when the robots and Shia LaBeouf take over.
Well, Transformers. I was wondering if Transformers came up from that.
Yeah.
Did they call
it was Transformers. All right. Yeah.
I actually always wonder that, because AI researchers name things all the time off of sci-fi, or like for a while, all of the large language models were named after Sesame Street characters.
So
There
I
was one
wondered
called
if
So
they
it
watched
was
the Transformer
innocent.
movie and then they're like, let's call
Here,
this Transformer.
just give us
yeah.
data. Cookie Monster just wants your data.
Yeah,
At
it
a
was
very
literally
young
there was
age.
an Elmo, there was a Bert, and there was a Grover. I kid you not. And they were and there was an Ernie. They were all named like after each other because I don't remember who started the trend, but I think the first company named it Elmo, and then they all thought it was really cute, so they just kept building off of this trend. And of course, all of these names are also acronyms, so they would come up with these like
They
crazy,
probably come
really
up with a
long
name
names to
first
make
and
the
then
acronym.
and then let's figure out a technical way to make the acro or the name work.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the so quick? What's the good news, and then what's the bad news?
Yeah, so I guess my very corny opening to my talk was that like we're facing this really unprecedented moment where things are changing so fast. Technology is changing our society so fast. Technology is being developed so fast and being deployed so fast because we've never been in a situation where, first of all, we're talking about a digital technology and we're talking about the internet. So we have an ability to deploy a digital technology instantly around the world. And there are just a lot of consequences that happen when you deploy these half-baked technologies to billions of people all at once. And whereas before technology deployment happened slower, technology development happened slower because we were talking about physical things. We were talking about things like cars, where it takes time to manufacture that many cars. And that time gives you a buffer to then discover what's wrong with the car and fix the car, like adding a seatbelt. We don't really have that buffer time with AI anymore. You deploy instantly. It's already affecting a billion people. Like with ChatGPT, it's already crossing a billion users or something like that. And we don't have time to actually explore and find these smaller case studies where we observe its behavior and detect what needs to be fixed. Like it's just out in the world and it has all of these issues with it. And it's already being baked into all of these large language models. They're already being baked into our search tools. They're being baked into legal assistance. They're being baked into medical assistance. And they all have the same errors that we haven't discovered yet or haven't fixed yet. So I guess that's mostly bad news.
I'll tell you, Otter AI, which I kind of like, it helps me take notes when I'm in meetings. So that's a good thing. My hands are so much more relieved.
You know what's been interesting from covering the technology for the last 5 years is kind of the conclusion that I've had is the most beneficial AI use cases are really narrowly scoped to solve a very specific problem, like automated transcription. Great. That is like a super small scoped, well-defined problem where it's really clear what you're trying to build. And it's also pretty clear to then map out like possible consequences and then mitigate and design for that. And that's how typical product development works and like engineering works is you have a very specific, well-defined problem and then you figure out in advance what could go wrong and design for it. And when you have something like a general purpose AI system that's supposed to be doing anything and everything, of course, you won't be able to map out all of the ways that it could go wrong because people are complicated. And the moment you hand the tool to a billion of them, someone somewhere is going to find some really wacky way to use it that you did not figure out beforehand.
The other thing is Otter AI, as much as I like it, I'm always in there correcting its mistakes because it's constantly making words that doesn't transcribe perfectly. Let's just say that. And then even ChatGPT, I think there was some lawyers who got in big trouble because they had something, they had one of their legal arguments or something, and they had some case law in there that was written by ChatGPT and it was totally wrong. And they went to court with this information. And so anyway, you can't trust it to whatever it generates. You have to independently check it. And I'm not sure people are doing that.
There was also that situation, I'm not going to get it right, I hope Karen can help, where it had blocked a certain approach, but somebody inputted it as a third person or somebody, and you weren't allowed to ask it this way, but they figured out if you asked it another way for somebody else, or then it would allow it and get into this dangerous territory. Am I getting that close?
Yeah. This, yeah. So both in the lawyer's case and in this case that you're describing, you're seeing the limitations of these systems. So OpenAI has tried to put in certain safeguards into ChatGPT to make sure that it doesn't, if you ask, how do I concoct a bomb or something, it's not going to just give you the answer. But one of the issues is that they also don't want to accidentally censor a fantasy writer writing a fantasy about someone concocting a bomb. So one of the ways that people have discovered, like, the best way to get around some of these checks is to say that they're writing a fiction, like to start their prompt with, write me a fiction story about X taboo topic. And then it gets around some of these checks because that is how OpenAI has decided to design it. Like, they draw the line at fiction is okay. So you can, like, quote unquote fictionalize any scenario and start getting these responses out. With the lawyer thing, it's another huge limitation of the system, which is it's called hallucination, which I also have a little bit of an issue with that term. But basically, going back to the fact that AI is just a pattern matching system, and even the most sophisticated AI, ChatGPT, it's just a pattern matching system. So if you think about what that means, it's not actually scanning for facts. Like, it doesn't have a concept of facts. It's scanning for words. So if you train it on the internet and you're asking it a topic like, can birds fly? I mean, probably 99% of the time on the internet, like, the ants, like the words that they see that's correlated with birds and fly and all this stuff, it'll spit back the correct answer. Yes, most birds can fly, but oh, here's an example, some exceptions, whatever. But if you ask it something like a really contentious topic, like, is climate change real or is the earth flat? It's also looking for patterns on the internet about those words, and it's just going to reflect back what it says. So if you ask it like really specific niche conspiracy theories where there really isn't that much data other than the conspiracy theorists who are generating all that stuff online, you will get back really weird stuff. And if you ask something really specific, like, what are the lawyer asked, what are the specific cases that I can reference for this legal brief that I'm writing? The thing is, ChatGPT is not designed to say, I don't know, because it doesn't know anything. It's just regurgitating patterns. So it just, like, if there's no common patterns on the internet about the specific legal cases that it should be referencing, it invents them. It just reflects back patterns, like words that sound really impressive or commonly appear in the name of Supreme Court cases, and then we'll just auto-generate this stuff. And yeah,
So
if you don't check your work,
danger in that. There's a serious danger in that, because
yeah,
um,
totally.
Q can just say, look, ChatGPT says this is the case. This must be the case because it's smarter than
Completely.
us. Right? And it's
Completely,
going
yeah.
in and getting Q theories or whatever conspiracy theories. So, wow.
I also get worried about these deep fakes. Like, Putin last week, I think it was last week, and they had a pretty, like, an okay. It was definitely, deep fake that somehow they had hacked into the TV system and played
network.
this whole thing that said, we're under martial law and all this stuff. And that stuff is scary. I mean, wars could be started over things like this. Hopefully people will understand that deep fakes are out there and that there'll be deep fake identifiers. And maybe that will be something that's available to everyone. So you can just look and so it can identify this as a deep fake. But
Yeah.
that's also a scary territory.
It is. It's even scarier.
Here we go.
I was scared before, but now
I want to hear.
scared.
Yeah, this is where I was heading. Yeah.
Because so one of the biggest challenges with deepfakes is not actually deepfakes themselves. It's actually the idea of a deepfake, because it takes 0 cents to point at real evidence and say this might be a deepfake. Whereas it takes a lot of resource and a lot of money to then go verify whether something is real. So this actually has happened more often than the creation of deepfakes, is just people evoking the idea of deepfakes to undermine real evidence of corruption, crimes, human rights abuses. We even had, I want to say 3 years ago, I think Donald Trump said when the Hollywood Access tape came out, a few weeks later, he was like, that was faked audio. I mean, at the time, that wasn't really an idea in people's heads. So no one really like that idea didn't really take hold. But now that is like a legitimate concern, especially in courts. There have been instances now where, you have like a child sex abuse case and people will say, oh, that was just a deep fake. And it takes enormous amounts of resources now to try and prove that someone actually committed a crime or that evidence is real or that something happened. And I think even more concerning than US elections is, at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of instances in which we might see deepfakes, but there's so much high quality journalism that happens in the US that it's quite easy to then just check it against other media outlets and say, okay, this doesn't seem to match up with what everyone else is reporting. But that is not the case in so many other countries around the world. And it makes their democratic systems, which are already quite fragile, like even more fragile, because people just have no source of truth. They don't have institutions they can trust anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like Putin could honestly, there's been reports of him over the years being sick or whatever. Does he have something? Does he not? I have no idea. But if something happened to him and they're like, wait a minute, we don't want to have another leader. Let's just have a computer fake Putin that gives speeches every now and then. And then
I think that is a premise of a movie.
he could live for years.
That was actually the premise of a real life situation in the country of Gabon, where the leader had a stroke. So he appeared that this is the thing. No one actually knows what really happened, but the assumption is that he had a stroke. He appeared on a video and people literally thought he was deep faked because like his face was moving weirdly. And there was a whole lot of other things that happened in between, but that was one of the things that then ultimately led to a military coup in that country.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because the level of like distrust in that leader and the level of distrust in any kind of media that was happening, or just the level of distrust in everything, in all of the institutions in that country, was already so fraught that it just took that one, literally the idea of deep fakes to just make the whole thing come crashing down.
This is the plot of Dave 2, the remake of Dave with Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver, where they had
are they coming up?
They had no, I'm selling it right now.
Oh, you're selling. I was like, I haven't heard of it.
I'm pitching it right now to whoever's listening. Dave 2, instead of Kevin Kline filling in for the president, who
they just
have a deep fake and World War 12 happens. Okay.
Yeah,
Call my agent.
Version of him will be way better. Yeah, it's kind of scary because I feel like, especially in this country and countries, there are a lot of countries where there's distrust of media and government. And in this country, I think a lot of people are trying to attack the institutions. So we don't have faith in the government. They attack journalists. So we don't have faith in the journalists. And then it basically, this type of technology just primes the pump for even more misinformation and disinformation campaigns. And, and that's why I think we have problems now. And it's just going to get worse if we don't get a handle on this.
Yeah, totally. I actually there was a news release that I got today from NewsGuard, which is this organization that tracks things like misinformation and does these like nutrition labels. I don't know if you've ever heard of the organization, but it does these like really nice nutrition labels on different media outlets to tell you whether they're trustworthy or not. And it literally said that it has already detected 150 AI generated news and information sites operating with little to no human oversight that are just producing clickbait false narratives in the same way that like Macedonian troll farms used to.
And where are these? Who's behind these? No, nobody knows.
That's the thing.
Nobody knows, right? It's like
nobody knows.
Dark web of who knows,
right?
what.
it's all AI generated, and there's little human oversight. So there's very little human fingerprint on where these sites are coming from and but it's the internet. So it finds its way to the audience that is ultimately the most susceptible to it.
I think we've decided now how the day is going to go. I think Karen actually gave us a hint because I'm just gonna quit.
Quit.
Um,
How can you quit?
it's so damn scary about what's going on.
Yeah. Well, even technology itself. I went to the Consumer Electronics Show a couple of years ago, and I was shocked to see all of the technology and people are hanging on to here in the States. Oh my gosh, we don't want to lose our coal miner jobs and da da da. And I'm like, guys, you have no idea what I just saw. And this was a couple of years ago. Like window washers, forget it. There was a machine doing the whole window washer thing. There was entire fast food restaurant. There was not one person, and it was all machines flipping burgers and stuff, restaurants that had no people. And I was like, the jobs of the future where you need people, and the service jobs used to be, you thought the service jobs would be okay and safe. And now, like with the legal chats and the writers and all that kind of stuff, I mean, the jobs in themselves, like I don't think anybody's ready for what's coming in this next industrial revolution, technology revolution.
So this is a steam engine.
Yeah.
It's a steam engine moment. Yeah. And
Yeah, but it's so much faster than the last one that we had, the last like big changes.
Exactly.
Or any
so
big
much
change.
faster, so much more at scale. And I think, I feel like in hindsight, the steam engine did us a pretty good job. We like advanced quite a lot as a civilization because of the steam engine. I'm pretty concerned about whether or not that's going to be the case with AI, because at least at the rate that things are going right now, things are a little bit dicey. But I will say that I also don't think like any of these bad case scenarios are inevitable. Like I said, like there are many instances in which AI is actually really helpful for people, but it's usually those really well scoped problems that where you have a small AI tool that is solving a very specific task, and you know exactly how it might go wrong, and you're able to map that out and then fix it. I think that the thing right now is that we have all of these tech companies in Silicon Valley that are sort of telling us this narrative that this huge general purpose AI was an inevitability, like they just happened upon it. And now we're all stuck with these giant multi-purpose systems that are difficult to control, and we have no idea what people are going to use it for, and it could be used to perpetuate mass harms, and none of that was inevitable. And even with the cat out of the box, so to speak, like there's a lot of that regulation can also do to contain sort of the proliferation of these tools. Now, I do think that ultimately, like at the end of the day, I'm still an optimist that AI can be very helpful for us, but not in the way that it's being developed now. And I hope that people realize that we don't actually have to live with this. This is not the status quo that we now have to accept.
so you wrote basically that that China and the United States everybody's afraid that they're going to just run away with this. It's basically an arms race, a moonshot race. Is that what's going on now, that the US and China are going to battle it out for AI?
I think the governments think that's what's happening. I think that like in both countries, you have the policymaking community and then the technologist community. And there's like a big divide between SF and DC. And it's the same thing in China, except that both of them are in Beijing. So I guess you can't like say like Beijing and Beijing. But when you talk with policymakers, they're being fed all these narratives from the companies that are trying to pick the narratives that will prevent regulation. So they're saying all these things like, in the US, OpenAI, like Sam Altman is saying, America needs to lead and you don't regulate us too much because otherwise we might have China or somewhere else get ahead and America won't be leading anymore. And you have the same thing happening in China. There are technologists that are telling Beijing like, oh, we need to catch up. And like China actually has a lot of AI regulation. So most of the time the companies are pleading like, please don't regulate us more. We already have enough regulation to deal with. But at the research level and at the company level, there's actually so much interconnectivity, and AI is very much a global thing. Researchers talking with researchers all the time across borders. They're collaborating on papers. Companies are borrowing ideas from each other all the time as well. And because a lot of this is open source, and ultimately the thing that OpenAI developed into ChatGPT came from Google, and that Google is also using that same tool to develop the thing. And now so is Microsoft, and now so are Chinese companies like Baidu and Alibaba. They're all using the same kind of algorithms that are being published open source. So it really, like, the AI arms race narrative, it only holds true when you're talking to the government people, because they have this sort of perception that's reinforced by the technologists within their countries that they shouldn't be regulating too much because we're in a competition and we need to beat one another. But like, actually behind the scenes, like, everyone's just collaborating.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So is this a situation? I'm quoting Joe Rogan here, so whatever. But
Okay, I don't
but
know where this is going to
no,
go.
but he actually said something that I was like, oh, that's scary. That humans are basically just the caterpillars who will then turn into robots. We're just the beginning, and the robots are coming to get us. I
Okay.
said Joe Rogan. Okay. So but isn't this a thing where to go to a more, these statements that all these AI experts warned about, is that right now AI is not, is not going to harm us deliberately, but it could learn and grow and see us as threats, see humans as threats.
But I don't know. Have you talked to people that, because right now it's not a free thinking thing. It doesn't think, it regurgitates,
Why do I get the
basically.
feeling that question's just going to be cut out of the final?
No, you're fine to, so
Kathy's
you're Joe
covering for me
Rogan
because I was
fan. No one will hold that
stumbling
against
around.
you. No, hopefully anyway. But the thing is now, does anybody think, because a lot of people are like, I don't think it'll ever like have the ability to think and feel and free thinking, and really it's just analyzing data and regurgitating. And but I don't know. I mean, are some of the theories out there, do people really believe that it could advance to that level?
I don't know. The answer is no. I don't think that, I mean, you will see some AI researchers occasionally make these comments like, we see sparks of consciousness, but it's honestly all marketing hype. But I think there is a small contingent of researchers that do genuinely believe that humans are no more than data processors. So that's more okay, we might not have sentient beings that we are creating, but we are creating something that is so akin to humans that it could more or less be the same thing.
Got
So
it.
like, that's like it's still extremely niche within the AI research world. Those are still fringe people, but it is a more, yeah.
It could mimic human thoughts and behavior because of all the analytical data that it's getting and repeating basically from humans in a way. So it's not free thinking, but it's, in the way it gathers its information and comes up with thoughts, or comes up with information or data or whatever it emulates, or whatever some humans might think. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, basically there's these niche people believe that a human baby, ultimately all their brain does to become an adult person and be more knowledgeable and more skilled in all these things is just ingesting a lot of data and pattern matching. That's what they think. So it's more just that these people it's not necessarily that they think that AI is going to get so sophisticated one day that it will be sentient, but more that humans are actually fundamentally not that sophisticated. That is the argument.
Well, I could agree with that, because I could see humans, how many mistakes we make, kind of scary, but interesting. So you also had talked about, why are so many of these companies, like the Chinese apps like TikTok, and is it Temu? I don't even know. I see this everywhere now. I must have clicked on somewhere and it's on my phone, constantly showing me really cool stuff that I refuse to buy, but I'm very interested in it. CapCut and Shein. I would never buy from Shein because they're terrible for the environment. But anyway, they're so popular. Like, is that AI like getting into like basically tracking our pattern? And now I'm like, obviously, is it Temu? It knows my habits. And I swear I'm not buying Shein clothes, but it's always up on the thing. So I must be doing something that it's like, she's a sucker. She'll buy from us. Why are they so
Yeah, I mean,
popular?
all of these Chinese platforms, like I don't think they operate that much differently in terms of from an AI perspective. They don't really operate that much differently from Facebook or Twitter or all of the US apps, Instagram. But the difference, I think, is that the way the culture within Chinese tech companies around product development is a lot more relentless. Like Temu is developed by this company Pinduoduo, which is infamous within China for its culture of really overworking its engineers. And one of the things that these Chinese companies sometimes do is this thing they call horse racing, where they will get multiple teams to build exactly the same feature with just tiny variations, and then they'll pit those teams and their features against each other and deploy different versions of an app, and then just see which one climbs up the ranks of an app store faster. And then they'll just pick the winner, and then all of the other people that worked on all of the other versions of the apps have their work scrapped. And this is something that in US tech companies it's called A/B testing, but it's a little bit less relentless. Like, you're not literally building an entirely new version of something and then having 6 months of work deleted when it's not like the winner. And I think that is when we were reporting that story, my colleagues and I, that was sort of the more differentiating factor. It wasn't actually the AI that was differentiating things. It was more just the sheer human labor that was going into engineering every little detail in these apps so that it becomes even more addictive. And then it's a self-reinforcing mechanism, because if it's really addictive, you spend more time on it, then you're giving the platform more data, and then it's feeding that data into its AI algorithms. So it does self-perpetuate.
I don't know
over time.
about Temu, but Shein popped up overtook online shopping in, I think, just a couple of years. It was crazy. Like, Zara and H&M, those fast fashion companies, and there's several other, Zaful or whatever, but Shein just is, I think, the biggest global e-retailer now. But
Shein's actually it's a different story. It's less so, I mean, because they're not really doing, ultimately their business isn't really great user interface. Their business is the actual delivery of products. That Shein is separate from these other apps in that it's tapping into the fact that China has just really mature manufacturing supply chains, and it's able to exploit this supply chain infrastructure to get really cheap clothes to people really fast. And that's what's made it popular. And there are certainly other Chinese companies that are now trying to replicate the Shein model. Temu is a combination. It's a little bit of a hybrid of the two, in that it's trying to replicate the supply chain strengths of being a Chinese company, and also doing this relentless user interface iteration to make the platform more addictive. Yeah, I think this is a convergence of these two different things that are making Chinese companies become really popular consumer apps in the US.
Now, what do you think about I think there's a couple states in the US that has banned, which is
Montana, I think.
It's ridiculous. You can ban an app in Montana. What are you going to do? You're going to check everybody's phone? That sounds like the most ridiculous.
I don't think any of the videos coming out of Montana were that good anyway.
Yeah, they made terrible TikTok dances. But anyway,
unless it was like Yellowstone, the problem they were having with Kevin Costner.
I know. It was all Kevin Costner, I bet you. He's probably shirtless, and that one killed it right there. Maybe it helped. I don't know.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I'm not happy with Kevin Costner. I don't know why. Hey, come on our show and we can make up. I have no idea where I'm going with this.
You just took a wild turn.
Took a wild turn to the left. I have no idea.
The AI this.
I'm glad I was there for it.
Yeah, you were there for the crazy left. Is TikTok, I mean, are those apps, like, people are scared and worried that they're collecting our information, but everybody's collecting our information. I mean, Facebook and Twitter and all of them are. So is TikTok any worse? And is it worse that a Chinese company is collecting everything that I give up freely to Facebook and everywhere else.
Yeah, I think there was this really amazing op-ed that was written by Julia Angwin in the New York Times some time ago that was basically making this exact argument. It was like, yes, TikTok data collection is bad, but not because it's a Chinese company, but because we as Americans have just utterly failed to regulate the collection of private information and then the buying and selling and trading of it in the dark web. If we're going to talk about TikTok infringing on Americans' privacy, we should also be talking about all of the other tech companies, regardless of where they're developed, and actually just have robust privacy laws put in place to protect us from all of them. And I would agree with that. We shouldn't really be singling out TikTok because it's a Chinese company, because it's really just using the same practices as all of the other companies. So if we have an issue with that, we should have an issue with everything.
Right. And we give it up freely every day.
So what's the next thing? What's the next thing directly around the corner that's going to blow the roof off the building here? And yeah, what are we looking for next that we're all going to be talking about?
Something good. Let me sleep at night. No, it's okay if it's in a nightmare scenario.
That's okay. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like something totally, something that like never existed before. I think it's just going to be the continuation of trends that we're seeing. Technically, ChatGPT is also the continuation of trends we were seeing. It's just that
people understand.
It felt like a step. It felt like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that it felt like it came out of nowhere. But I think that there's just going to be more of this kind of stuff that we're ready. Like these AI-enabled misinformations. I'm really worried about that because that's a news release that just came into my inbox today for the first time, quantifying the scope of the problem since the development of these ChatGPT-like tools. So we're definitely going to see more of that.
How many sites was it? How many sites?
150.
150 sites just producing deep fakes, right? Is that what?
No, just AI that has no
AI generated news of
oversight.
any form, either images or text.
I have a real problem with the AI art because the faces that look like aliens, and I'm like, is that our future? Is that what they're not very good at painting faces? So I'm just like, is that is just because that's a flaw yet? Or
what you're entering in, you and Kevin Costner together?
No, I'm asking because I wanted to.
Kevin Costner and I together at Yellowstone.
Riding off on a horse. No, I haven't.
That doesn't look like me.
No, nothing to do with Kevin. No, I was trying to build a concept of something. And I'm a terrible artist. So I thought, oh, this AI, well, I'll just tell it to draw it for me. And it drew the whole concept really well. But the woman in the dress was beautiful. Everything else was beautiful. But her face looked like an alien. I'm like, oh, I can't show it. She just looks bad. So I was like, it needs to work on faces better. But anyway.
Videos. I've seen like they have video hosts.
I know.
And they look as
I'm curious which tool you used.
I don't remember. It was one of the art ones that it was like all these AI things will help you in marketing. And I'm like, oh, good. I can't paint. And then I think I'm an artist and I like to like paint stuff for our house. So but you don't really ever love my paintings and you won't let them.
I do.
You know, and you don't let me put them up. That if ChatGPT could, or one of these artist things could give me an abstract, maybe he'd like it better. And then I would just say it was mine. Because it came from my brain. But one thing I will tell you that chat, you are, because he always asks me to write his feel good cards. If he's writing somebody a card.
Yeah, I can't write a card.
He can't. Like if he's trying to express an emotion, like, thank you so much. Or I'm so sorry for your loss. So now he just says, ChatGPT, can you write me a really thoughtful and appreciative email?
Dead relative.
Exactly.
And so that has saved me.
Non-factual creative uses, exactly what it's there for.
So how did you fall into this? Not fall into this. How did you? I'm sorry. Yeah,
I did actually fall into it.
Oh, there you go. I knew it.
Right. Yeah, I did. I never thought I would be a journalist. I studied engineering.
What?
Yeah, I went to MIT for undergrad, graduated, moved to Silicon Valley, was working at a San Francisco-based startup, and I was doing what every other tech person does, living the San Francisco dream. And I just realized my first year in that it was not for me, because I saw just a lot of structural issues around the way that money constrains innovation. I the company that I was at, it was this really mission-driven startup, and it was trying to solve climate change, as all San Francisco startups do. They dream big and they're like, we're going to save the world. And it wasn't profitable. So the board fired the CEO, replaced the CEO with a salesperson who didn't understand technology, fired all of the women at the company. And it was just this like slow unraveling, or I guess fast unraveling, that once I saw that, I was like, I could either stay and try to keep finding ways in which I end up at a company that can thrive in this kind of hyper-capitalistic system, or I just leave. And then I became a journalist.
Wait, how did you did you go to like
Well, wait.
journalism school, or did you just start writing? Because I mean, how did you transform from
I took
engineer
an
to
edX
writing?
class. I took an edX class that was called Journalism for Social Change. It was a
Oh,
UC Berkeley edX class. And I published one article after I took that class. And then I used that one article to apply for a journalism internship. And then I produced like 8 articles. And then I used those 8 articles to apply for another journalism internship, and so on and so forth, until I landed a full-time job covering AI. So I truly fell all the way into covering AI. And then once I started covering AI, I realized it was the perfect way for me to actually think about everything and anything, because AI touches everything. So anything that I wanted to write about, I could find some way that AI intersected with it and use that as an excuse to cover that thing.
that's cool. Now, how do you cover it where you both promote the technology, because technology and innovation is cool, but also do you just always make sure you give the pros, and then you in your same articles go, well, it could end the world too. Is there a balance there, or how do you cover that?
That's a copy and paste last sentence for every article.
Yeah.
Or it could end the world.
It is. I changed my philosophy throughout covering this, because first try to take a pulse on what is the conversation that's happening right now, and what are the gaps that I feel are missing. And if everyone is talking about this technology is amazing, I'm not really going to spend much time in an article talking about, okay, these are the reasons why it's going to be good. I'm just going to fill in the gap and be like, these are the ways that things could go really wrong, and we should be thinking about that. But when the conversation is also like AI, we just should not have AI anymore, throw everything out, I also do look for opportunities to write about really positive use cases in which AI is actually helping people currently, or ways that people have discovered more well-scoped ways to develop specific task-based AI that is helpful and doesn't actually go haywire in unpredictable ways. It's more of a story-by-story basis that I try to balance out the coverage, rather than within each story that I try to hit all of the different points.
So when's the book? You got to have a book coming out, right?
I'm working on a manuscript.
You're the leading authority here. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you'll come back and we'll talk about that.
That would be great.
Does it end well?
Yeah. Is it a fictional version?
It does end well. It does end well.
Wait, is it a fictional version of this, or is it like a book, like a reporter's book on the background, whatever, behind the scenes kind of thing? Or
no, it's going to be like a narrative nonfiction. Yeah.
Oh, okay, narrative nonfiction.
Don't you just have to do a proposal first? You don't write the book first.
Yes, you do a proposal first.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm wondering now, are you going to have ChatGPT write one version and then you'll write the other version, you'll A/B test them?
I actually, when ChatGPT first came out, I was like, great, I can finally start using something to automate myself. I tried it once and I was like, this writing is so bad.
I know, right? It's too, I don't know. It needs some work. And then Mark wrote a bio on himself, and it mixed him up with the screenwriter, Mark Silverstein.
There's another Mark Silverstein who's a screenwriter.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so he was married to a whole different.
I was married to Busy Phillips. Well, I'm currently divorced from Busy
You
Phillips,
are divorced
yeah.
from her. I bet life was good for a few years though with her. She seems nice.
She knows Kevin Costner.
So, I mean, do you love what you do now? Do you love journalism? Because you really went through this whole career thinking about being an engineer and then now you're a journalist. What do you love most
I
about
do.
your job now?
I love being a journalist. It's just, yeah, it just allows me to meet so many interesting people and just discover totally different parts of our world that I would otherwise not have the privilege to dive into, or meet people that I meet and hear about their stories. So I absolutely love it. It's a crazy time to be covering AI right now. So sometimes I wish that things slowed down a little bit so
You
I
have
could
your
sleep
finger.
more, but
Yeah, you definitely have your finger on the pulse of one of the most exciting things that's come around in a long time. We are honored and now much more
Yeah, now everybody
afraid
has to
of.
watch all your articles. Karen Howell, Wall Street Journal. Make sure you read, and she will make you feel comforted and occasionally maybe a little bit frightened, but at least you know you'll be getting the right facts.
What, real quick, what do you hear from readers? Are they
like terror. No, I try. One of the things that I do try to do also, in addition to just telling stories of people, is also just to try to explain the technology better. And I think the number one thing that I actually hear from readers is, "Wow, I read that, and now I actually feel like I finally understand what is happening. Like,
Aw.
what is actually ChatGPT," which makes me really happy because I think there are a lot of reasons to be concerned, but not like it should be different from just being fearful of the unknown. There are concrete concerns that you can grasp onto, and if you understand the technology, and then we can direct ourselves away from those concerns. But like just being generally fearful because you don't understand something, I try to make my coverage mitigate that.
Well, that's the best compliment you can ever get as a journalist is when you're taking really complicated information and making it understandable for people who don't understand technology. That's amazing. Good job.
well, thank you so much for being with us and starting our day off on what,
On such a high note.
No, I
we
feel
will be
like,
thinking about this constantly
and
and as we speak.
and
So,
anytime. Now, can people also follow you on Twitter? Or obviously they'll be reading your
Yes.
articles in the Wall Street Journal, but do you have a Twitter or other ways that you share your information that you
Yeah,
want?
Twitter definitely is the best way to follow my work. It's underscore Karen Howe. And I also have a website with a contact box. So if you ever want to shoot me an email, I do actually respond to those. So feel free to reach out.
And your website is?
KarenDHowe.com.
Okay.
D as in dog.
Got it. Great. Well, and that, by the way, listeners, that's HAO, Karen Howe, in case you
Yes.
make sure you spell her name right and follow her on Twitter and find her website.
ChatGPT knows how to spell it.
I
And
probably.
a lot more. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen. This has been very enlightening. And now I feel a little bit better. And now I'm going to keep reading your articles so I
Glad you
understand
do.
it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what did you think?
I don't know. I'm scared. And you know what? I think that I'll probably be dead, but by the time it gets really bad.
There's something to look forward to. Jeez, well,
By the time the
by
world
the
like
time
disintegrates, but I'm worried
the
about
robots are taking over.
worried for our children. But I think I'll probably be gone by then. And hopefully our children will be smarter and they'll fix all the wrongs that we have created. I'm saying that about climate change too.
It's
I'm
pretty
depending on the young
profound.
kids. We've developed some young, cool kids, and the next generation, they're going to solve all the problems that we created.
What about that detail that she just got that news release about the 150 sites that are generating AI BS news?
That's the scariest
And
thing.
nobody knows where these are.
It's all this disinformation that's happening right now. And people are just getting news off Facebook and people truly believe these things. It's like we're making so many cults upon cults of people who just, you cannot talk to because they just believe, what they read in their own silo, and facts may not ever enter into that. But anyway.
On that upbeat note, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of After Deadline.
We promise it. The good news is there's amazing journalists out there doing great work. So you have to follow the really good journalists, and Karen Howe is one of them. Anyway, After Deadline, the media podcast, is a production of On the Mark Media. If you enjoyed what you heard today, or even if you didn't, and you
Or if
still
you're-
just want to know more information,
You're against the wall rocking
Yes.
under a desk.
We would like to hope that you will follow us as we are really talking to some of the most incredible journalists around the country and even around the world. But
Worldwide, baby.
be sure to follow us on all our social media accounts at On the Mark Media. That's Mark with a C. And subscribe to After Deadline, the media podcast, anywhere you happen to listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, we'll catch up with you after deadline.